And now, stand-up community subscribers and listeners from around the globe, it's time to Stand Up with Pete Dominick, where we ask the important questions that impact you, your family, and your community. Such as, will my uncle's heavy construction job help him get his foot in the door with pole dancing? And with passage of the Build Back Better bill now a huge uncertainty, will they ever finish the latest public works project, recycled toilet fill? And now, the podcast host whose cool dad credibility is proven by his knowledge of Andre the Giant's defeat to Hulk Hogan, Pete Dominick!
Yes, that is indeed correct. Thank you, Pete Co, for being the announcer of this show each and every day. Brand new introductions, brand new news dump jingles, and so many more contributions. Thank you, John Carroll, for the music. Thank you for pressing play, for downloading, for giving a review, for signing up for a paid subscription to Stand Up with Pete Dominick, where you have the great honor to be a part of our amazing and growing community of wonderful folks who meet up every Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on the virtual Zoom hangout ever since the pandemic began, and we continue to do it almost every Thursday, and including this Thursday. Looking forward to having you, seeing you. Today's show welcomes the great Bill Browder, who is the author of Red Notice, which is a very important book. I interviewed him when it came out years ago, and I've interviewed him several times. And Bill, of course, is a really important person, just period. But to talk about what is happening in Russia, what is happening in Ukraine, and what his concerns are, of course, he is a guy that Vladimir Putin wants dead desperately. Tried to get Trump to trade him for GRU agents, and he talks a little bit about that. Of course, I asked him about it. I always have to. On today's conversation, you're going to love my conversation with Bill Browder, and I decided to invite my parents back on the show. Mom and Dad joined me today for like an hour-long conversation about their lives, about their careers, and I think that anybody of a certain age will appreciate it, because if you're, say, 40 and up, you got parents my age. If you're older, maybe you are my parents' age. Either way, that's the big demographic for this show. And it was fun and funny and poignant and awesome, and a lot of folks have been asking me recently, I just noticed, hey, how come we haven't heard from your mom and dad? Everything okay? Yep, they're great, and we talked for an hour, and it was funny, and I think you're going to like it. And if you don't, that's fine. I think you're going to like both these interviews, or both these guests, or all three, because my mom and my dad joined me at the same time. But first, before that, I've got my Bill Browder conversation. And before that, I've got news for you. Folks, it's time for The Last 24. The Last 24 is brought to you by Truebill. If you want to save money on all those subscriptions that you forgot all about, those online subscriptions, go to truebill.com/standup. All right, well, plenty to discuss. Well, you know what? Maybe it wasn't a crazy news day. On Monday, it was a lot about the fact that the President of the United States called a Fox News reporter, Peter Doocy, who got his job because his dad is a reporter, Steve Doocy, and he's real dumb, and a lot of people have called him dumb, from John McCain and now to Joe Biden. Called him a dumb son of a bitch or something like that. I've got the audio for you, but that was like the biggest story from yesterday, which is ridiculous, of course, and shows maybe how bad we are, how bad our media is, social media, multimedia. It's all of us. I mean, let's be honest. Let's blame ourselves. But I like Jared Holt's tweet. He writes, the president said, bitch. We go now to Washington for 48 hours of live political analysis and commentary from today's changemakers and idea cobblers. I was specifically embarrassed by that. I did an apprenticeship as an idea cobbler back in 95. Anyway, let's get it out of the way, just because it won't take long, and I'll give you a little perspective here. But yesterday at the White House, the president was wrapping up a photo op in front of the media. Several reporters shouted questions at Biden, including Doocy, who said, do you think inflation is a political liability in the midterm elections? And of course, it's a stupid question, because of course it's a political liability. It's just a dumb question. And basically, well, here's that.
Will you take questions on inflation then?
Let's move. Thank you. Thank you
Do
all.
you think inflation is a political liability?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son of a bitch.
Will you take
I don't know. It's definitely kind of phrase my dad uses. I should have asked him about that. It's of a certain generation. Stupid son of a bitch. I don't know. Where I come from the Biden types, I think, to a certain extent. My dad always, I think, really identified and liked Joe Biden coming up because he talked like that. But, never good for a president to call a reporter a stupid son of a bitch, no matter how satisfying it is. I mean, that's my opinion. I agree with Tom Nichols at Radio Free Tom, who writes, I don't think the president should have sworn at a reporter, but the people that are now trying to make this a thing are immensely full of shit. Right. Because it's not a thing, really, that we should be concerned with. That's what Jared Holt just said. And by the way, here is John McCain talking to Peter Doocy back in October of 2017, and this is equally as hilarious.
Has your relationship with the president frayed to the point that you are not going to support anything that he comes to you and asks for?
Why would you say something that stupid? Why would you ask something that dumb? Huh?
I love. I mean, could that be more awkward? Imagine if you're the reporter. Peter Doocy has been insulted by that many prominent people. I guess some people look at it as a badge of honor, but I really think he's authentically stupid. But to be John McCain, to say, why would you ask something that stupid? I like it. Okay, and now just to give you context, obviously, if it was Tuesday or Wednesday or a day ending in day, then President Trump, former disgraced President Trump, was insulting specific reporters or all reporters, calling them the enemy of the people. Here he is calling Chuck Todd a sleepy son of a bitch.
You ever see the story where it's 1999. I'm on Meet the Press, a show now headed by Sleepy Eyes Chuck Todd. He's a sleeping son of a bitch, I'll tell you.
That's right. Wait a second. That's right. That was like my favorite of all of that disgusting man's insults, because I don't think he meant to say he's a sleeping son of a bitch. I think he meant to say he's a sleepy. He said it once. I think he meant to say it again. But to say that he's sleepy, that makes more sense. He's like low energy. That's kind of the thing that Trump liked to ridicule because he's a shallow, unintelligent man that has nothing actual to add to a conversation. So he just insults people in unoriginal, lazy ways like a schoolyard bully. But he said sleeping. He's a sleeping son of a bitch. And I remember how funny I thought that slip up was. Listen to it one more time.
He's a sleeping son of a bitch, I'll tell you.
He's sleeping. He's doing his interviews and he's actually asleep. All right, well, now let's go to the White House briefing room. Let's step in the briefing room where Jen Psaki, behind the podium, where Peter Doocy continued to ask terrible questions of Jen Psaki.
Does the president think it's a big deal that today the Dow Jones is down at one point more than 1,100 points?
Well, to start with, we focus on the trends in the economy, not any one day and any single indicator. Unlike his predecessor, the president does not look at the stock market as a means by which to judge the economy. I would note that the market is up around 15% compared to when President Biden took office.
All right, well, I guess it wasn't a terribly stupid question. I mean, if I had a chance to ask Jen Psaki a question of Joe Biden, it would not have been that. It would have been about the lack of prosecutions from the Department of Justice or something like that. But or something about Build Back Better or voting rights, whatever. Here, though, this one really is a stupid question and gets me pretty triggered because I'm right in the center of the fight in my own community at the Board of Education. Anyway, let's go back to the White House.
In Virginia, 7 districts representing 350,000 students are suing the state. They're hoping to get a strict mask mandate for students that has been rolled back by the new governor reinstated. So who does the president think knows best for students? School board members or parents?
Well, the president believes that public health officials have the best guidance on what we can all do to protect ourselves, including teachers, administrators, and students. It's always been up to local school districts to determine how they're going to approach what implementation measures they are going to put in place.
All right, that's a great answer, except for when she misspoke and said stool instead of school, but it happens to the best of us, right? Point is, it's a real bad, dumb question and a really great example of what's wrong with media, certainly the ratings-driven corporate media that works to divide us, is asking a question, is it this or is it that? And a good answer is usually to say neither. And that was a good answer. I mean, first of all, to ask, does he think that the board members or the parents, they're the same thing? Who do you think the board members are? They're volunteers and they're almost always parents in the school district. But the answer that she gave was perfect. Neither. You listen to public health officials, you listen to experts, and that's it. That's why that was, of course, today's stupid question.
Why would you say something that stupid? Why would you ask something that dumb? Huh?
That little huh at the end is also a very intimidating little thing. Huh? I really want to know. Answer the question. All right. Okay. Let's move on now to something more important, because Tucker Carlson on Fox News has been asking a lot of questions, folks. He's just asking questions. But lately, for a while, he's been basically saying that we shouldn't be concerned about Russia or about Vladimir Putin. Let's not forget, Vladimir Putin attacked this country, our elections, intervened in our elections. I mean, we've intervened in a lot of other people's elections, too. We're not exactly angels, right? But Russia, under this president, intervened in the 2016 election to help Trump get elected, and then launched cyber attacks and all kinds of other things that he's intervened in. And obviously he's invaded Crimea. I mean, there's just a litany of crimes that this man is responsible for. But the truth of it is, as President Obama's very smart former foreign policy or national security advisor, Ben Rhodes, tweeted, it's not about siding with any nation. America is supposed to side with universal values, but the American right, this is so important, such a good point, the American right now embraces an ethno-nationalism that, like Putin, is hostile to universal values. It's a white supremacist thing. Our white supremacists identify with Russian white supremacists. Here's Tucker.
Wait a second. Why is it disloyal to side with Russia, but loyal to side with Ukraine? They're both foreign countries that don't care anything about the United States. Kind of strange.
Not kind of strange at all. And there was some really good commentary around that quote that I saw, including from some very popular Twitter accounts like @Spiro Agnew's Ghost, who writes, because America is a democracy and we side with democracy, not murderous thugs. Tim O'Brien of Bloomberg and Trump biographer writes, because one is a fledgling democracy and the other is an authoritarian state. And because Putin might target the Baltic states next, but Tucker knows this, of course. Rick Wilson says, Putin's best boy, Tucker Carlson. And finally, Daniel Goldman tweeted about this commentary from Tucker Carlson. He says, I'll take the bait. How about one is a democracy and one is an autocracy with a dangerous dictator? All right, let's now change gears once again and highlight government doing its job. That's why the Vice President, Kamala Harris, was in Milwaukee on Monday touting the removal and replacement of lead pipes, where she also highlighted efforts to update aging infrastructure across the country. Listen to the Vice President in Milwaukee on Monday.
You know, what the mayor spoke to really does highlight where lead pipes becomes an intersection of so many other issues. Because this is an issue that is about public health. This is an issue that is about education. This is an issue that is about environmental justice. This is an issue that is about the beauty and importance and strength of our labor unions and their apprenticeship programs. This is an issue that is about growing a middle class, as the mayor said, because it is about developing the skills to do the work that must be done to strengthen the United States of America and our infrastructure. All of these issues intersect around this issue of lead pipes. And then combine on top of that, as has been said, the moral imperative that we have to finally take this issue seriously, not as a matter of concern, but as a matter of action.
All right. That is the Vice President Kamala Harris in Milwaukee touting the infrastructure investment at work. And very important, hopefully that got a lot of attention, at least in Wisconsin and the Midwest. Certainly didn't get a lot of national attention because the president said that a Fox News reporter who got his job because his dad works there is a stupid son of a bitch, which is true, but really distracting for media that needs ratings. But I don't. I just need you to subscribe to the show because it gives you a robust, nuanced news segment as well as 2 great interviews each and every day. And I produce the entire thing myself. This is my job. And so sign up now, standupwithpete.com. Time for COVID news, folks.
COVID news.
All right. COVID news is brought to you by Indeed.com. Indeed.com/standup. You want to hire somebody really good for your job, for your company, for your firm? Go to Indeed.com/standup right now. And here, ladies and gentlemen, I've got for you a whole bunch of headlines and sound on all things coronavirus. Virus-fighting antibodies capable of blocking the Omicron variant persists 4 months after a third shot of the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine, according to a new study. Vaccine boosters have provided robust protection against severe diseases from Omicron variant in the United States, according to 3 reports released Friday. There was a lot of question as to how effective the vaccine booster was going to be against Omicron variant, severe disease in the Omicron variant, and apparently it's been robust, according to these 3 reports. The FDA removed 2 monoclonal antibody therapies from the list of COVID-19 treatments for now, announcing that they're ineffective against the Omicron variant. So the monoclonal antibody therapies, at least 2 of them, weren't working. 7 school boards in Virginia sued to stop the mask optional order by the new governor there, Glenn Youngkin. Welcome to the governorship. You're being sued the day after it took effect. 7 school boards sued to stop the optional. They want it to be a mandate. A courtroom showdown between Sarah Palin and the New York Times over a 2017 editorial was delayed Monday because the former disgraced Alaska governor tested positive for the coronavirus, which is why I put that in the coronavirus COVID news. Sorry, I almost called it the wrong thing. I mean, I did, and then I corrected myself. Vaccine requirement is starting for non-citizens entering the U.S. by land or water. That's interesting policy, which I'm not sure why it exists, but we should look into it. Basketball great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says that the John Stockton vaccine anti-vax comments, he defended the use of COVID-19 vaccines and said that his fellow Hall of Famer John Stockton comments about 150 athletes dying from them make other athletes look like dumb jocks. All right, I like Andy Slavitt. I think he's a real smart expert, and he was on John Heilman's podcast, Hell or High Water, at the Recount, and here is a good way to start the sound section, the audio I've got for you on COVID news.
And the state of the pandemic is evolving to the next stage. It's clear COVID isn't going away, but it's also clear we have the tools to live with it and that science can beat it. So while we don't know what to expect necessarily each month, over time we now will have a smoother road because the tools we have will let us get there.
All right, Andy Slavitt, what do you think of that? You agree with that? Have you heard something similar? Very trustworthy expert, a lot of different ways to look at that. Here is a CNN reporter talking about how things are going on in France. I thought this was interesting, so I included it in today's COVID News sound section.
Also protests in France over the weekend. They're upset after a court upheld the legality of the new health pass law in France, which comes into effect today. It requires vaccination for a range of really everyday activities. Restaurants, bars, even regional transit is affected. So life is about to get very inconvenient and very difficult for the unvaccinated in France, and that appears to be by design. The French president has made no secret in the past of his desire to piss off the unvaccinated to try to encourage them to get the shot.
All right, so that's what's happening in France. And now here's the WHO's Director General who warned conditions remain ideal for more coronavirus variants to emerge, and it's dangerous to assume Omicron is the last one. But he also said the acute phase of the pandemic could still end this year if some key targets are met. Here's WHO chief whose name I will not try to pronounce. Oh, wait, I got to give the guy some respect. He's the chief of the WHO. He's a very famous microbiologist, malaria expert. And here's someone on the internet pronouncing his name accurately, followed by the guy talking.
Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. But it's dangerous to assume that Omicron will be the last variant or that we are in the end game. On the contrary, globally, the conditions are ideal for more variants to emerge. To change the course of the pandemic, we must change the conditions that are driving it.
And that means vaccinate the world, folks, which is exactly what our friend Peter Hotez and his colleagues have made an effort to do. Get more vaccines out there to more people in underdeveloped and developing countries. And finally, in COVID news, here is a former, I guess, talk show host and was it some kind of doctor, Dr. Mehmet Oz. He's now running for Senate in Pennsylvania, along with like 5 other assholes. Sorry, John Donvan. 5 other people. John always tries to get me to act a little bit more classy and mature on the show and not call people assholes. But come on, it's Dr. Oz with Sean Hannity. What am I supposed to say?
Why is Fauci talking about, 4th and 5th booster shots? He's got to defend what he's been saying, and he's too arrogant to pull back from the precipice. And everyone now sees what's happening.
Oh, how rich. Dr. Oz and Sean Hannity talking about Dr. Anthony Fauci being too arrogant for, I don't know, anything compared to those two. Okay, well, that's all I've got for you on today's Last 24 and COVID news and all of the rest of the sound. And now it's time to get to a whole bunch of rest of headlines and what I call the news dump. It's all the rest of the stuff I can't go into, but gives you information as much as you can get in a news segment that airs daily. A new original jingle by voiceover artist and musician, singer-songwriter Pete Coe.
Abandoned building, Siberian man found it looking frump. Got some handsome polar bear selfies on today's news dump.
I don't know how he does it. I really do think he makes it look easy, Pete Coe does. Anybody that wants to send him any jingles, any writing, always welcome to it. Always great, buddy. That's actually a story about a Russian photographer who has been photographing polar bears for his career, but he's never observed them in abandoned buildings of this weather station, and that's what it's all about. He captured close-up photographs of polar bears roaming inside and outside the rundown structures, and it's amazing. All right, what else have I got for you? How about this? Billionaire Mark Cuban has launched an online pharmacy aimed at lowering generic drug prices, promising steep discounts over traditional distributors. The Mark Cuban Cost Plus drug company announced the opening of its online pharmacy Wednesday, so I guess I just did a live read for it, but that should be interesting. So check that out if you're paying the high cost of drugs for some chronic issue for yourself or somebody else. This is all the rage, and of course this is part of what I talk about, not the specific story, but with Bill Browder coming up. But President Biden directed the Pentagon to put 8,500 U.S.-based troops on heightened alert for potential deployment to Europe to reassure allies amid rising fears of a possible Russian military move on Ukraine. So 8,500 troops on high alert for possible deployment. And now you can get free tests, but now you can get free N95 masks apparently as well. But what took us so long on this? Stop complaining. They're here. Go get your N95 mask at your nearest pharmacy. The world's biggest and most powerful space telescope has reached its final destination 1 million miles away. James Webb Space Telescope fired its rocket thrusters for nearly 5 minutes to go into orbit around the sun at its designated location. NASA confirmed the operation went as planned. What an amazing scientific technological advancement. The mirrors on the $10 billion observatory still must be meticulously aligned, the infrared detectors sufficiently chilled, and the scientific instruments calibrated before observations can begin in June. But flight controllers in Baltimore were, quote, euphoric after chalking up yet another success on this mission. Washington, D.C. and 3 states are suing Google, saying it invades users' privacy, allegedly deceiving consumers, invading their privacy by making it nearly impossible for them to stop their location from being tracked. In a lawsuit filed Monday, they alleged Google has systematically deceived consumers about how their locations are tracked and used, and also says the internet search giant has misled users into believing they can control the information the company collects about them. So that is an interesting story to follow as well. 7 were injured after an F-35 jet crashed on an aircraft carrier in the South China Sea. It was the USS Carl Vinson, part of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. pilot was conducting routine flight operations when the crash happened. They safely ejected and were recovered by a military helicopter. 6 others were injured on the deck of the carrier. The crash is the first for an F-35, which is a single-engine stealth fighter designed for operations off of aircraft carriers. And I believe that is a boondoggle of a waste of money as well. It's like 35, I don't know how much money it is. Let's see, how much money is it for one of those F-35? $78 million for one F-35. I'll take 2 F-35s, thank you. Okay, thank you. Cash. I'll pay cash. All right, folks, that is all I've got for you on today's news dump, brought to you by Indeed.com/standup and Truebill.com, which is an awesome app. A lot of listeners have been using this and taking advantage of it, and I'm happy to tell you about it here on today's program, because if you found yourself constantly signing up for subscriptions that are impossible to cancel, never pay for an unwanted subscription again with Truebill. Managing your money is hard enough. It's a headache. I hate even thinking about it. And you're juggling all these subscriptions. That's even harder. So don't go it alone. Get Truebill. $5 here, $10 there. Monthly subscriptions often feel like a great deal until you forget about them after you forgot about it all. Get your subscriptions under control with Truebill. We all racked up a lot of streaming subscriptions over the last year, that's for sure. And half that we're not even watching anymore. Find and cancel useless subscriptions with Truebill.com/standup right now. Truebill.com/standup. Start canceling your unused subscriptions at Truebill.com/standup. Last time, go right now. Truebill.com/standup. It could save you thousands a year. All right, well, that is it, and now it's time to get to the great Bill Browder, who I interviewed when his book first came out, and a publicist reached out, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? That book is called Red Notice, a true story of high finance, murder, and one man's fight for justice. Walter Isaacson says Bill Browder is an amazing moral crusader, and I agree with Walter Isaacson. He's also the founder and CEO of Hermitage Capital Management, which was the investment advisor to the largest foreign investment fund in Russia until 2005, when Bill Browder was denied entry into Russia and declared a, quote, threat to national security as a result of his battle against corporate corruption. Following his expulsion, the Russian authorities raided his offices, sieged his investment companies, used them to steal $230 million of taxes that the companies had previously paid. And then when Bill Browder's lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, investigated the crime, he was arrested by the same officers he implicated, tortured for 358 days, and killed in custody at the age of 37 in November of 2009. And since then, Bill Browder has spent the entire time, his career, fighting for justice for his former attorney and friend, Sergei Magnitsky. The Russian government exonerated, even promoted some of the officials involved until Bill Browder took the case to America, where he campaigned to lead the U.S. Congress in adopting the Sergei Magnitsky Rule Law Accountability Act, which basically Vladimir Putin absolutely hates, but it imposed sanctions and asset freezes on those involved in the detention, ill treatment, and death of Magnitsky, as well as other human rights abuses. And the law, for the first time, U.S. sanctioned Russia in 35 years. It was the first time that they did that and became the model for all subsequent U.S. sanctions against Russia. And so he's currently now working on similar legislation passing in other countries in the European Union, as well as Canada. And Bill Browder is on Twitter, at Bill Browder, BillBrowder.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to have him on the podcast for the first time. He was on the old show in Sirius several times, but here we go right now. All right, I've got the legend, the man, Bill Browder. It's so great to see you. I've talked to you many times over the years, and I've always had nothing but respect for you and your work, and I really appreciate you joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to see you.
I mean, we hung out one time, even. I tried to get you to party with me, but you were too serious. You're like, I'm good, thank you, bye-bye.
I remember that was in Aspen.
That's right. I didn't want to say it, but yes, the Aspen Ideas Fest. It was great, and I'm glad that you were there, because people do realize, how important of a source you are, and you've always been honest and courageous and open to give interviews. Of course, obviously, your book is super important. But I did want to ask you on the record over this issue. I feel like not many people know a lot more about Russia than you and why you should be a really important person to talk to. So I was just wondering, have you been reached out? I've seen a few interviews you've done, but have like the CNN and the MSNBCs, have many networks reached out to talk to you?
Yeah. I mean, it's I live in Europe, so I'm doing a lot more British media than American. But I think I'm on CNN tomorrow night.
Great.
Various bits and pieces. So
excellent. Really glad to hear it. So I obviously, you know what I want to talk about. How concerned are you? Are we on the precipice of war, of a Russian invasion in Ukraine? What do you think? What do you know?
Well, it's there's only one person who has any idea whether Russia is going to invade Ukraine, and that's Vladimir Putin. It's and he doesn't report to anybody. He has no parliament he reports to. There's no media there's a public that he has to worry about. Public opinion's not important. There's no laws that he has to obey. He just has to decide at any moment, when he wakes up, is he going to invade or is he not going to invade? And I don't think he's made up his mind. And I think he's looking for any clue to how painful this is going to be if he does. Now, there's a whole risk reward in his mind. For him, the reward of invading is not that he hates the Ukrainians and he's been seething at them for years. He could care less one way or another about the Ukrainians. There's no specific beef with the Ukrainians. His whole issue is that he's been a dictator, an illegitimate dictator who shouldn't be in power, who's worried about being overthrown. And in order to not be overthrown, he's got to do something dramatic. And generally, dictators who are whose public are getting wary, the dictators have to pull something out of Machiavelli 101, which is start a war. And so that's his game. He's got to start a war, or maybe not start a war. And so starting a war helps him shore up his domestic support and get people distracted from whatever their gripes are with him. But on the other side, starting a war has all sorts of terrible consequences. One of them is that the Ukrainians are going to viciously fight back.
Right.
And that fight back is going to lead to a lot of casualties, a lot of dead bodies, a lot of dead Russian soldiers who will be sent back in body bags. And then on top of that, that invasion will also trigger some type of Western response. And he's looking very carefully to see what kind of Western response is that going to be. Is that going to be, a full suite of sanctions? Is that going to be sanctions freezing the assets of the oligarchs? Is that going to be cutting Russia off from SWIFT? Who's going to go along with it? Is it just the Americans, or will the Germans block it, or will the Europeans? And then he's got to wonder, how much military intervention is there going to be from Ukraine? Are the Americans going to supply defensive weapons? Or the Brits going to supply defensive weapons? And so he's making all these calculations in his own mind, and trying to figure out how to play this. And he loves this because he's sitting in the driver's seat. He's got 100 plus thousand troops at the border. He could do anything. And for a guy who's running in a country with the economy the size of the state of New York and a military budget which is about the same size as the UK military budget, right. The whole world is now begging him at his feet, trying to have conversations with him. In his mind, he's the most important guy in the world, and that by itself is a huge windfall for him.
Let's take a step back from the precipice in terms of the narrative that we're talking about, just to look at the at least recent history of U.S.-Russian relations. And some people might and even have said, I think Trump-supporting types talked about the timing here to try to vindicate Donald Trump from this. Of course, and you could talk about just politics in general. Russia invades Crimea, which was part of Ukraine during the Obama administration. They don't invade Ukraine or anywhere else during the Trump administration. So if Trump was in his pocket, why would they have not done it then? Why now waiting until Biden's in charge? To me, it would seem clear. My answer to that, knowing nothing, is that they already invaded America, our 2016 election, cyber hacks and so on. They've been weakening us and more importantly, creating such a divisive wedge in America that you have now Russians supporting Republicans supporting Russia and Vladimir Putin, which seems like a pretty big win for Putin. Point is, with COVID and with everything that's happened, it seems like a good time for Vladimir Putin to do this if there ever was one.
Well, it's the best time. And I wouldn't be too self-centered about the whole thing. I mean, he's not just thinking about the United States of America. He's thinking about the whole world. So, I mean, yes, America is important, but he's also looking at Germany. Germany has a new chancellor. So Angela Merkel, remember, she was chancellor for a while, and in certain places she was soft on Russia. But the new chancellor, it comes from the Social Democratic Party. And that's the same party that Gerhard Schroeder, a previous chancellor, came from, who's now Putin's best friend. He's getting millions from Gazprom. He's on the board of Gazprom. He's out there, sort of apologizing for Russia with the Germans. And so this new German chancellor doesn't, he's super soft on Russia. And then you've got a French presidential election coming up, which so nobody wants to take any big actions there. And so France and Germany are the two major parties in the European Union. And then you've got gas prices, at the highest level they've been in a very long time. Russia is making windfall profits, and so their treasury is chock full of cash. Everybody is scared of a cold winter and gas being cut off. The Germans get more than 50% of their gas from Russia. And so, this is his moment. If he wants to do something, he's never going to have a more powerful moment to do something than just right now. And so, he's, as I say, I don't think he's made up his mind. And it's not even clear what doing something is. Is he going to invade Ukraine with 100,000 troops?
Right.
That's the most extreme version. It could also be, some more little green men like in Crimea go in and organize a referendum in Donbass or there's any of a number of things he can do. And then we have to decide what's an invasion and what's not an invasion. And then the Germans will disagree with us. And there's so many different ways that this thing can play that it's not a binary 1-0 invasion, non-invasion type of story.
Which let me just jump in and say that's not what certainly American media wants or American politicians want. They want this to be simple and binary and not understand all the different interests that you just laid out. But let me try to pivot to sanctions and the argument and debate over sanctions. I think one of the most effective arguments in trying to tie what you just said together in terms of the German interests is this natural gas pipeline. And there's energy analysts at like Goldman Sachs saying that sanctions against Russia could curb Russian gas flows indefinitely, which obviously would affect domestic politics in European nations. And more importantly, the economies of those nations. You could bring them to a screeching halt if they're not getting that natural gas. My understanding is that you disagree with that analysis.
First of all, if Russia is selling its gas to Germany, Germany is paying for its gas to Russia. And by the way, 50% of German gas comes from Russia. So it's not as if, so Russia can play a game on a short-term basis on gas, and just to really wind people up and get everybody upset. But if Russia were to cut off the supply of gas, then they would cut off the supply of cash. The export of gas and oil is the only thing that keeps Russia going. And so, they have to, they're not going to indefinite. That article from Goldman Sachs is the dumbest thing I ever saw to say that Russia is going to stop supplying gas so they stop getting money on the only thing that they get money for. That's just not going to happen. Even during the entire Cold War, Russia continued to supply gas. Now, it doesn't mean that Russia won't use gas as a weapon. It doesn't mean that Russia won't curtail the supply of gas for some period of time to jack up the price. There's all sorts of games they can play, but in the end, they get their money from Russian gas from selling to Germany. And so the idea that all of a sudden there's going to be a complete embargo on the export of Russian gas, which is, I guess, what Goldman Sachs was intimating at, is just silliness. That's not going to happen. It doesn't mean that the Russians won't play games, and they always have. And there's something else that's important to point out here, which is, is the absolute failed policy of Germany towards Russia. So, Russia has been playing games on gas for the last 15 years. And several times, for short periods of time, they cut off the gas. So if you've seen that happen, and I've seen it happen, and if you paid attention, you've seen it happen, and everyone else has seen it happen, what's the natural reaction from an unreliable supplier of gas? The natural reaction should be, let's go get our gas from somebody else.
Right.
But the Germans didn't do that. The Germans did just the opposite. The Germans said, you know what? We're going to build a pipeline from Russia to Germany to supply gas, to become more dependent on Russian gas. And the idea that they would do that. And by the way, that was the same pipeline that Gerhard Schroeder, the German chancellor, was getting millions of dollars from.
That sounds bad.
So we keep on getting interrupted by this thing here.
Yeah, what's pinging?
Should we redo that?
No, I can pull it out, but if you can stop it, and I'll cut this part out.
I wish I could stop it.
Is it quitting your email or quitting your text?
It's just the goddamn thing. I don't know how to do that. But anyways,
don't worry about it.
Sorry.
It's all right. So it sounds like the German political interests are, corrupted through influence peddling, the way that, sometimes you think other countries aren't as corrupted by influence peddling, by money, but clearly with this former German chancellor influencing the current one and this gas deal. But why not, push back? Why? What is the alternative to get gas? I remember hearing Germany had great goals about 100% sustainable renewable energy outside of wood burning, I guess, which is a big thing. But what would be the alternatives? Why aren't they doing the responsible thing for the German people, which is getting them, not for the climate, obviously, but getting them cheap natural gas from they're playing the long game from the best source?
Well, because at some point somebody that your best source is going to start playing games with you and then and blackmail you with the gas. I mean, there's other places to get gas from. It's not like Russia's the only supplier of gas in the world. Mm-hmm. Qatar, for example, which is, by the way, they're having emergency meetings to get liquefied natural gas from Qatar. Norway produces natural gas. Algeria produces natural gas. So any normal, national security analysis would say we don't want to be dependent on anybody for anything that could make us go cold in the winter.
No, I remember, not to jump in, but it was one of my favorite things ever on Meet the Press a million years ago. After 9/11, Tom Ricks, the historian and writer, said that the way to avoid wars in the Middle East is to invest in renewable energy or not buy their oil. And it was a simple answer, but it certainly did seem to be a pretty accurate one, and sounds like what you're saying now for Germany and other countries who get Russia's gas.
Well, there's one other thing is that after Fukushima, Germany said we don't want to have any do nuclear anymore. And so that they've completely closed down their nuclear industry so that they're even more dependent on gas. And then now they're dependent on gas. They became more dependent on Russian gas. And now the whole world is being blackmailed by Putin. And they're the ones breaking up the alliance because of this dependence on Russian gas. And it just, I could have predicted this at any point a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And it's so predictable because that's what Vladimir Putin does.
Right. And you know him well, and he knows you very, very well. Remind people of, if you don't mind, because this is pretty dramatic, of his demands to Donald Trump about you.
Vladimir Putin is extremely mad at me. Why is he mad at me? Because his agents killed my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, back in 2009. And I made it my personal mission to get justice for Sergei. And for the last more than 12 years, I've gone around the world and advocated for something called the Magnitsky Act, which freezes the assets and bans the visas of the people who killed Sergei Magnitsky and the people who commit other human rights abuses. Vladimir Putin's got a lot of assets, and he's particularly mad about this piece of legislation. So when he met with Donald Trump in Helsinki in July of 2018, he only had one request of Trump at that summit, which was that if the Department of Justice asked for Putin to hand over a bunch of GRU agents who hacked the U.S. election. And he said, if I hand those guys over, I want Donald Trump to hand over Bill Browder. And it took Trump 4 days to walk that back. And Vladimir Putin has literally made me his single largest foreign priority. I'm the scalp that he wants most outside of Russia.
I just want to tell you that after reading your book and talking to you, it never has left me how important that was and how inspiring it was. And I've done a lot of I've worked a lot to advocate for people, not quite like that, and certainly not in the kind of danger you're at. But people often don't want to stand up because they're worried about the consequences. But your work on that has always inspired me, and I know it's inspired a lot of other people who are familiar with it. And I just always want to mention that on the issue of sanctions, Bill. This is This is the argument. This is the debate. Are they effective? Will they work? Is there anything left? A lot of people like to debate about sanctions in general, the foreign policy experts, and they have, scholarly studies and historical studies about where they, for example, didn't work. There seems to be a lot of data that they generally don't work. You, however, have an argument. No one has followed the effect of the sanctions closer because you're the guy who was basically the architect for them. So have they worked and will they work?
Well, it all depends on which sanctions you use and how you use them.
Sure.
And so just to say sanctions don't work or sanctions do work is kind of a academic, as you say. I mean, there's one thing that's really straightforward, and this is sort of obvious. Vladimir Putin is the richest man in the world. He became rich by stealing an enormous amount of money from the state and from people in Russia. He's worth $200 billion. And he doesn't keep that money in his own name. He keeps that money in the name of oligarchs who hold that money not in Russia, but outside of Russia. So instead of all this geopolitical talk, Vladimir Putin values money more than human life. And so the easy answer is that we have his Achilles heel, which is if he's holding his money with oligarchs, and those oligarchs hold their money in the West, then you can use the Magnitsky Act, this piece of legislation which I spent the last decade advocating for, and you freeze the assets of the top 50 oligarchs who hold his money. And I guarantee you, if you start by doing 5 of them today and say, if you don't move your troops back 50 miles from the border, another 5 will be sanctioned next week. And you sanction another 5 next week, and then another 5. I bet you in 2 weeks' time, he says uncle, because he values money more than human life. It's just the most obvious thing in the world. And so, to think about this stuff theoretically is nonsense. It's obvious. It's money. Go after the money.
And just to be clear, I don't know if you said this, but I've read you saying this. Maybe I missed it. He doesn't hold his own money, Putin. He may be the richest man in the world, but the money is held by the oligarchs that you're talking about sanctioning.
Correct. So the reason he doesn't hold the money himself is that anybody who has a piece of paper that says Vladimir Putin owns some money, owns some accounts or some property, they can use that to blackmail him. And so all the money is held on a handshake basis by these oligarchs. And we know who they are. There's no mystery to who these people are. It's well known. And it's very easy. Just make the list is out there. Just start working through that list. And so instead of worrying about a single soldier dying, a single Ukrainian dying, just start going. And it's the most effective way. So you sanction 50 people. Now, why is it that we haven't done that? We're sending hundreds of millions of dollars of military assistance, which I think is good. But before doing that, why not just really go for the jugular?
Why not?
Maybe this is something they're talking about behind closed doors, but the fact that they're not doing this, it perplexes me. And it's not as if this is unknown. It's not as if this is not being talked about.
The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, knows this.
It's real easy. The Magnitsky Act says that anyone who's involved in human rights abuse or high-level corruption can be sanctioned on the Magnitsky list. You can prove very clearly that a bunch of these oligarchs are involved in high-level corruption, and we also know those oligarchs hold assets for Vladimir Putin. And so, if you were to freeze their assets, and you do it in conjunction with the European Union, you do it in conjunction with the UK and Canada and Australia, which just passed the Magnitsky Act, all of a sudden, Putin's money would become inaccessible. And all of a sudden, you've got him by the short and curlies.
I read an interesting debate that featured your opinion as well as somebody else named Julian Spencer Churchill. It's at the Toronto Star, thestar.com. And you've made some of the points that you've made here, but I just wanted to make one of the points that Julian made, which seemed interesting and somewhat persuasive, which is that, and maybe you consider some certain people Russian appeasers. There certainly are a lot of people in America that don't think we should, that Russia, this is their issue, this is their concern, this is their sphere of influence. It would be like Russia interfering on our relationship with Canada or Mexico. And what is Julian, I don't know the gender, it doesn't matter, writes, protecting Ukraine by confronting Russia is far less important than appeasing Russian concerns and peeling Moscow away from its near alliance relationship with Beijing. This is because Moscow has legitimate interests, whereas China currently has unlimited global ambitions, an economy and population 10 times that of Russia to realize it. Let Russia do whatever it wants, because our concern is China.
Well, our concern is China, but our concern is also Russia. That's sort of a
that last part was me saying
that's an absurd argument to say that we should just let Russia do what they want. So let's just map this out very simply. So let's say we do nothing about Ukraine. They go into Ukraine because we've done nothing, because they know that we are going to do nothing. So then they go to the Baltics, and if they go to the Baltics, then are we going to do something? Are we going to go to war with Russia? Because those countries are members of NATO.
Belarus, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan.
But I'm talking about the Baltics that are members of NATO. So do we then go to war with Russia, or do we allow them to take the Baltics? And then why not Poland? I mean, what stops him?
Well, they don't have interest in any of that.
Sure, he's got those were all part of the former Soviet Union before. Why not? Why are they not part of his sphere of influence? Poland was part of the Iron Curtain. It was part of the Soviet Empire. Why would you cut that off? What about Hungary? And then down to the Balkans. And hey, why not Italy? They got some good stuff in Italy. I mean, at what point does it stop? The whole point is you can't redraw the maps. I mean, who is this guy saying, like, let him have Ukraine? It's
not him. I mean, I've read this and heard this from any number of analysts, military, diplomatic, scholars. I mean, a lot of people are saying this is a Russian. This is their problem. Ukraine is not a NATO member. It's not our problem. Let it go. These are old, wars and so on. Obviously.
Well, I mean, it's not a NATO member, but it is our problem because. So what happens next? Do you do Poland? I mean, is Poland our problem? Or to say, well, Poland's in Europe. It's not our problem. I mean, the point is that if you have, it's like Neville Chamberlain. Remember the British Prime Minister during the Second World War. He after Germany took Czechoslovakia, he said, they can have Czechoslovakia, peace in our time, appeasement. And that didn't work. It doesn't work with dictators. You have to stand up to dictators. You can't let them do this stuff because he's already done it. He went down to Georgia, did it. We didn't do anything.
Right.
He then took Crimea, didn't do anything. Now he's moving on to Ukraine. It's a never ending problem because that's how these guys operate.
All right. Last question. Just say a word about the people of Ukraine. I had a great interview with Andrea Chalupa, who I know last week, and she really did a great job of talking about the history and the culture and the interesting, the revolution and what happened and how they all came out. And it's so important that we don't forget these are real people's lives at stake. So say a word about them and their actual concerns and interests.
Well, Ukraine is a sovereign nation that has its own population that deserves their own destiny, what they choose. They shouldn't be under the yoke of another country. They should be able to choose if they want to join NATO. They should be able to choose if they want to join the European Union. They should be able to choose if they want freedom of speech. And they shouldn't have a mafia country a next door deciding what their fate is going to be. And it's remarkable if you look just go on Twitter and you can see there's interviews with 60-year-old Ukrainian men that are saying, okay, I'm going to take my family stick them safely in our summer house in the country, and then I'm going to pick up arms and I'm going to fight. And all the Ukrainians are going to fight, and they're going to fight to defend their homeland. And even if they're outmanned and outgunned, people who are defending their homeland are usually a lot better fighters than unmotivated invaders.
Well, if you want a scholarly study on insurgencies, they always win, apparently, like almost always.
Well, I mean, look, in the Vietnam War, the United States lost, and that is the
Iraq War, the Afghan War, and the Russians in Afghanistan, and the Americans against the British, and I don't know. They almost always win. The point you have this great video of this Ukrainian man who's asked by a reporter, "Do you have a plan of action in case of Russian invasion in Ukraine?" Yes, we do. Do you mind sharing it with us? I will take a gun and go for a war.
And I guarantee, and that gets replicated thousands upon thousands of times. Ukrainians are going to defend their homeland. They're going to fight to the death, and it's going to be extremely, extremely bloody and ugly. And it's totally unnecessary. The Russians, Vladimir Putin there is no beef with the Ukrainians. They haven't done anything wrong.
Why did the what is the Russian public hear? What media outlets, what reporting do they get? If this is, in fact, as you and many others say, a bloody war for Russians and their body bags coming home with Russian flags, do the Russian people know about that?
Well, the Russian people will know about it if they see the body bags coming back. They don't know about it right now in the same way as we know about it, because they get fed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's what I'm
propaganda.
saying. Right.
That what they're hearing is that, we're being encircled by NATO. America and Europe want to take us over. We have to protect our homeland. We have to protect our buffer zone, our sphere of influence. Ukraine is part of that. It's important. They're never really a country in the first place, blah, blah, blah. And then that's how he justifies it. But that all works when there's no cost.
Right.
But all of a sudden, if the price of bread has tripled because the exchange rate has collapsed,
right.
if every day, and they're not going to show it on the news, but if every day someone is their son, their brother, their uncle comes back in a body bag, that starts to really weigh heavy.
You can't obfuscate such things. Prices, families broken and destroyed. You can't censor that, is what you're trying to say.
And it's uncensorable. And eventually the people are going to say, why are we doing this again? Right. What's this all about?
Bill Browder, the legend. I so appreciate your time, your work, and talking to me today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, how about that? Bill Browder, everybody. BillBrowder.com, at Bill Browder on Twitter, CEO of Hermitage Capital, head of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign, and author, of course, of Red Notice. I hope that you appreciated that, and I hope that you will tweet him and tell him that you heard him here on today's episode of Stand Up. That's a big guest and a big get for me, and I was real happy that he joined me on the program. So please go let him know, at Bill Browder. You really appreciate his perspective. He is one of the most courageous people. Very, interesting guy, very serious guy. I try to give him a laugh and stuff, but the dude's been through a whole hell of a lot, and Vladimir Putin wants him dead. So how would you handle it? All right, well, that is my main featured guest, of course, of today's show. But coming up now, a little bit of fun. Talked to my parents for an hour and I taped it. People always love when I talk to my mom and dad. It's been a really long time since I taped a conversation with them. And so I talked with them a little bit about my childhood. I talked with them a little bit about their lives. And we talked about some issues that we'd all had with law enforcement. My mom talked about being a teacher. I loved it. They talked about their feelings on the anti-vax folks, and it was just wonderful. And I'm so fortunate and lucky to have these guys as my parents. Mary Dominic, Chuck Dominic, 50 years of marriage in Syracuse, New York is where we talked, and here we go. Chuck and Mare, Chisel D, hit it. Okay, here we are with Ma and Pa Dominic. There's been a lot of requests. We haven't heard from you guys in a long time on the podcast. Chuck and Mary, everybody, thank you for joining me. Hi, Mommy.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, Pa.
Pete.
Hi, Pa.
Do they really call us Ma and Pa?
No. What was my issue with, before we get to important issues, I was talking to somebody about this today. What was my issue with sleep disorder, sleepwalking? Can you describe that to folks? What would I do? What was that?
What we used to call it? He was
sleepwalking.
No,
we used to call it overtired.
Overtired.
Oh, right.
That was our word for it. He's overtired because you would get tired, and then you would start mumbling and talking, and you would stand up and walk around and like you were wide awake, and your mom didn't know how to handle it, but I did.
That's right. I always told him to get you back to bed
because you wouldn't. You were just wouldn't react to your mom or anybody else, but I had the magic, and I knew how to do it.
What would you do? I would
talk to you and kind of cajole you. Is that the right word? Cajole?
That works.
Okay, I used to cajole you, and I would talk to you and try to figure out a magic word or something that I could tell you, so you'd be comfortable, and then you'd eventually go back to sleep, and then you might get up later and do it again.
Did that last for
me because I was trying to sleep, and you kept.
Yeah, well, he usually did it once a night, not every night, but just one.
Not all the time, but I mean, after a while, it's like, Jesus, is this kid ever going to stop this shit? And then So we got you through it.
How long would you say that that stage lasted? That I was
stage.
Doing?
It was over and off and on for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, but it would last for like maybe 10 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on, it could take a while.
Yeah.
It was.
I don't think it ever lasted 45 minutes.
I think it did.
We're going to disagree on that.
Well, you weren't there. I was there. You were downstairs doing whatever.
No,
you did.
I was upstairs waiting for you to get in bed.
Be alone.
We're going to have to end this while we argue.
Okay, just one other story. I think you might have told us on the show before. Did you or not? The night that the police came to the house with a chopper.
Yeah.
Have you ever told that story on the podcast?
I don't know. I'd be glad to tell it because, for the attention.
Go ahead. I mean, I don't think I need to set it up. I was maybe 10.
It was a very, very snowy night, and I stopped at the gas station, and I got gas, and but I had to pump it, so I went in and paid for the gas first, and then I went out and pumped my gas, and I left.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't have automatic, where you could put your credit card in, so you used to go inside, and after you pumped your gas, you pay for it. Well, I paid for it first and was very busy in the bodega there, whatever you call it. And then, so I drove away. I mean, I had already paid for it. And about,
I don't think you even knew the word bodega when this happened. That's like a thing
I couldn't think of,
the convenience store, gas station.
It was Jack's.
I couldn't think of
Cards Corners,
or anything like that. So I used bodega. I just said that.
All right.
I didn't call it bodega back then because it's not a bodega. First of all, it's not in the neighborhood. It's in the middle of nowhere, where we live.
That's why it just seemed out of place. But go ahead, don't let that railroad.
No, I'm not. Where was I? So, anyways, I came home, and your mom wasn't home. Your mom was I don't know, visiting your grandmother or somebody like that.
I think she was at I think she was at grad school.
No, I picked up Brandon somewhere.
Oh, yeah, Brandon's my cousin.
When they lived in Oxford or something. I picked him up and brought him home with me.
Mm-hmm.
That's your cousin.
Yeah. Okay, so mom wasn't home. It's a snowy night.
Mom was not home. So I go home, and you boys were there. And I see a helicopter. I didn't see it. I heard a helicopter going overhead.
Which was not normal.
No.
He got worried.
It was a helicopter going over. I mean, at the time, I wasn't worried. It's a helicopter. I don't care.
Yep.
I figured something happened and they had the troopers had their helicopter, the sheriffs, whatever.
But you were worried about me because I wasn't home yet and it was snowing hard.
When I saw the helicopter, I didn't start worrying about your mother. That didn't bother me. I saw no connection at all. Let's just be clear between a helicopter and your mother not being home.
Okay.
But then a sheriff pulled in the driveway. And I go, oh, my God, it scared the hell out of me. And so it was a woman. It was a female sheriff. And she came, knocked on the door, and I opened the door. Yes. She said to me, did you just get gas at the gas station, the bodega down the street? She didn't call it a bodega. And anyways, so I said, yeah. She says, well, you left without paying. I said, no, I didn't. And now you boys are in the house now.
Yeah.
And I said, I bought gas, but you just scared the hell out of me. That's why you're here? And she said, yes. And I says, well, I have a receipt. And I started to go into the garage, which was attached to the house, to get the receipt out of the car.
Yeah.
And she started pulling her gun out.
What?
And I looked at her and says, I'm going to get a receipt out of the car. You don't have to pull your gun out, And then I came back in. And then I really was very upset, and I let her know that.
Yeah.
First of all, I said I bought gas, and she said, oh, "Okay." Then she said, I still remember where she says, "I'm sorry." She says, "Wait a minute, why am I apologizing? I didn't do anything wrong." And I said, "Whatever, lady." And then she went about her business. So, and I called the sheriffs the next day. I said, a helicopter was flying around my house looking for me because I left the gas station with $5 worth of gas, which I had paid for. And I said, I don't understand why you sent a helicopter.
Yeah.
And their answer was, well, you have to realize, sir, we had to find you as fast as we could because you were using up the evidence.
Really?
And that's why I hope you'd never become a sheriff.
Would you, remember the that really nice, pleasant interaction you had with that police officer when I was growing up?
Which one?
I'm joking. I don't remember that.
No.
So
no.
Okay.
We have
And
a
Mom,
sheriff
would you-
living next door to us now. That's a pleasure.
All right, I'll edit that out. So,
okay,
Mom, we don't
Yes.
need you getting targeted. Would there be anything you'd add to that night or that story? Did you found out about it when you got home, and that's that?
I almost feel like I can picture that woman, but apparently I wasn't there when she came in, the female.
All right, let me do one more fun one. I was just telling somebody about this too, and again, I think this is mostly going to be a dad recollection here. But lately I've been talking a lot about, obviously the girls are teenagers, but I'm talking about a lot about mistakes that kids make, and thank God that when we were growing up, we didn't have, not only my generation, your generation, cameras everywhere to capture all of our idiocy and stupid things that we did. As both of you know, the dumbest thing I ever did was be a party to a mailbox baseball, which is a bunch of guys in the back of a pickup truck driving by mailboxes and smashing them with a shovel handle and lacrosse sticks. And a lot of people think that's the whitest crime that one could commit, is bashing mailboxes with a lacrosse stick. The whitest crime, of course, is an insurrection. But I digress. The point is, we did this during the daytime. We were caught and we were arrested. And for whatever reason, and maybe you can help enlighten me, the police officer, I think another sheriff, again a female, if I recollect, came to the house, and we knew that. We were notified ahead of time that she'd be showing up, and she came into the house, and she basically had to read me my rights. I was 15 at the time, maybe 14, 15. Which mattered because 16 and over, it was a different, a different level of crime. But my recollection is the sheriff came in the house to read me my rights. Dad, you were, as you should have been, pretty ashamed and embarrassed. And you said to me, listen, you were already pretty pissed, of course, because you had to endure this humiliation. And you said, you don't say a word, not one word, to this police officer. And I looked at you and I said, okay. Then my recollection is the police officer did come in, and in the kitchen, we were all standing there, and she did, in fact, read me my rights and ended with, you had the right to remain silent. Whatever you do or say can and will be used. And then maybe she asked, do you have anything to say? And then I looked at you, and you looked with your piercing blue eyes right through my skull.
Yeah.
You gave me that look.
Yeah.
That communicated all I needed to know, which was, if you say anything, you will have defied me and you'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
And then my brain thought, well, this isn't ever going to happen again. And so I have to say something.
Yeah.
And I offered her a Werther's Original from the candy drawer.
You did?
You're
did joking,
what?
Right?
No.
You offered her a candy, Werther's.
What you said, what she read you your rights, and then she said, now, if you cooperate and tell us what happened, it'll be better for you. And that's when I said, no, it won't be, and you're not going to say a word. And then you said, Chris had nothing to do with this. And she wrote it down. And I looked at you, I says, now do you understand what I'm saying? She's taking every word you said. And,
well, Chris was 16 and he would have had a much more serious penalty, which is why I was doing that to benefit my pal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it didn't benefit him because they're the ones that had to hire a lawyer and nobody else did.
Well, yeah, because he was 16.
Yeah.
But I was trying to get him off the hook.
Yeah. Well, it didn't work.
When in fact he provided the shovel.
Yeah. And it's not called baseball.
Mailbox baseball.
No, it's called mailbox bashing. It's not baseball.
Well, listen, different parts of the country, it's like soda and pop.
Crime. It's a white crime.
It is. Yep.
So your father talked her out of taking you away.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't remember that at all. Where was she going to take me?
Jail.
No.
He's going to handcuff you and take you to jail.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but
how did you talk a cop out of, well, anything?
Well, it's all my attitude.
Yeah.
Right attitude.
Oh, yeah.
You don't remember me offering her candy?
No.
Werther's?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you did.
I don't remember that.
Well, we had Werther's then.
We did,
so you probably offered her one.
Yeah.
I think they're still
have them, actually.
Pretty sure the same bag is still in the drawer last time I came up.
Yeah,
so
it's the same Werther's. Yeah, you kind of sweet talked her with your candy.
What are you talking about that he talked her out of it? What happened?
They were going to take you away. She had her car here. They were going to put you in handcuffs and take you away and put you in jail.
Well, why didn't they?
I talked her out of it.
What did you say?
I said, please don't do that.
No.
No.
That's not you.
Basically it was, look, he's going to show up and do whatever he's got to do. And, whatever, if he's guilty or whatever, we're just going to have to do whatever he had to do.
All right.
Well, the best part of it was that we made you guys replace all the mailboxes that you bashed.
Yep.
And then it was a very hot day, and one of the mothers came along and gave you refreshments. And I said, what are you doing? She says, well, it's a hot day and I don't want to see them suffer. And I said, that's why they're here. They're supposed to suffer.
Do you know what mother it was?
It was Chris's mom.
Oh.
Well, in the end, you do realize that we only repaired about a third of the actual homes that we hit mailboxes.
I don't know, but I do know that
we had to go to I remember
there was one mailbox you said you guys didn't hit that. I said, well, it's damaged, so replace it anyway.
Oh, wow. That seems... I remember you took us to the hardware store to buy the mailboxes, but I remember we only bought like 4 or 5. In fact, we certainly had a lot more.
Well,
targets.
You guys were just crazy.
Boy, I hope it's past the statute of limitations.
Such a wild bunch of guys.
Did you have to do community service or something?
No.
Oh.
Well, I never.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I did. I'm sorry, I did. Yeah, I was on parole. I had to do. I don't know why I said no. We had to do community service. I volunteered at the American Lung Association.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were having an event that day. It was a bicycle ride to the city.
Yep.
And Kristen, his cousin, was in charge of it. So Kristen, come on in. So Peter was there having a grand time, and when it was time to leave, I had to give him a ride home. So he went over and grabbed a T-shirt and a baseball cap. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I've been working all day. They got to give me something."
Nothing wrong with that. They got an extra swag. I don't know why you're making it. All right, I just thought of one more. I've told this story. This is really a fun thing to do with anybody that, your family or friends you've known a long time. It's like, what's your recollection of this? And it's interesting to think about how people's memories are different and which one's more accurate. But, Dad, Landmark Theater, I'm performing at the oldest theater in Syracuse, and we get there before the show starts. There's nobody there. I go to take a whiz, and I can't find the bathroom, and I finally find a bathroom, and I go and I pee, and when I come out, there's a gentleman there standing there, like, confronts me and says, "Did you not know that that's a handicap bathroom?" And I don't think I did. I don't.
The gentleman was a city cop,
right? But he was plain clothes, and he was giving me a hard time.
He was wearing a uniform.
Is that right?
Yes.
My recollection was he was plain clothes.
No, he was wearing a uniform. He had a gun and everything, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. Okay. So anyway, I didn't realize it was. I don't think I realized it was a handicap bathroom. Empty theater. No one was there yet, and so he said something about it being a handicap bathroom. And what are you doing in there? And I said something to him about I didn't see any handicap people.
Yeah, and then I said, "Why are you bothering him?" He went to the bathroom. He had to take a piss.
Yeah,
he went to the bathroom. So what's the big deal?
Yeah, and then what?
And he let go of it. That was the end of it. And
you don't remember him jacking me up against the wall?
Yeah, I remember. I'm going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you because that's the rest of the story. So I went over there and I'm buying sodas were 50 cents a piece or something. It was some stupid low price. So I said,
"You're detailed."
I said to you, Peter, would you like a soda? And you said yes. And I looked at the guy. You know how if you're in a bar, you say, send that guy down there a drink, you know?
Yeah.
Send that guy down there a drink. So I said, we'll have 2 here and give that cop a soda also. I was joking around. And the cop come over and he started on me and he said, you're being a wise guy. And he was mad at me. And then you tapped the cop on the shoulder and said, he's joking around. And the cop grabbed you and put you up against the wall. And that's when I said to you, Peter, don't say a single word. And this time, because of our history with sheriffs and cops and all the trouble you had been over your life, you know, in and out of jail and all that stuff.
I've never been to jail. Never been to jail.
I've never been. No.
Except for when you took me to
Somebody has been in jail, though.
Who?
Yeah, and
Somebody in this family has been in jail.
Go ahead.
That's different. And then you didn't say a single word. And the cop let you go.
Yeah.
And then I called a cop that I knew from when I was a kid. And he was one of the captains in the police force. And I called him up and I said, do you remember me? He said, sure, I do. I said, well, I told him the situation. He said, I will look into it. He called me back up and he says, they should have arrested as soon as he put hands on your son was absolutely wrong. And we should have arrested him. I said, okay, great. And that was the end of that deal.
As soon as the son put hands on the cop, you mean?
No. As soon as the cop put hands on you, he should have arrested you. He says, and the cop let go and he never should have done that because I said, well, okay, I still don't know what my son did. So that was, it's just a matter of police. I don't know. They've got a gun, they've got a badge, and they got power. They get away with a lot of stuff, and it's I've always it's Black Lives Matter. I always thought it was when I was a kid was my life matters too because there was a lot of harassment. By
no,
police.
What you're saying actually is something I've said for years. You're saying it a little bit differently, but what you're saying is that black folks obviously are disproportionately attacked by police officers, but to some extent that obfuscates the fact that so are we. Like,
yes,
I've always said this. I've had so many terrible interactions with police officers, and I'm not black. I'm a white person, so it's not just. It's a matter of systemic abuse where you power, and I don't think it's that controversial. I'm not sure why anybody even thinks it is, but.
Did you notice that I've never had a problem with the law? I've never had a problem with any police people. You know why?
You're a beautiful white woman.
Because I'm white and I do what they say. They always say to the blacks, well, just do what they say and you won't have a problem.
Yeah, that would be a game changer. Haven't you been arrested, Mom?
No, they never caught me.
Oh, what was the crime? That you want to confess to it?
I don't commit crimes. You know that. I'm a goody two shoes.
By the way, you weren't just insinuating that black folks, just if they complied, they wouldn't. People might misconstrue that. I want to make sure that you're not saying that if only.
That's what other people say.
Right. Yeah. Just want to.
Them.
Right.
If you just did what they said.
Right. You don't agree, though, with that criticism. No. Right. Okay. Just want to make sure nobody.
They don't even have to do anything.
Right.
They don't even have to blink their eyes, and the cops are after them.
Yeah. We agree on that. But what about all the good things? You don't talk about the good things the cops do. And I always say that's because they're doing their job. It's like, why don't we talk about the planes that are landing? Anyway. And by the way, a police officer in New York City was just killed. And there's been a huge outpouring of respect and appreciation and concern. And his family gets a huge, hundreds of thousands of dollars. He gets a funeral, a formal dress. All the police officers from all over the area, react. And this, because police lives matter. It's never been a question. When they die or have issues, the entire community supports them and they get money. It's like versus other people who are victims of police officers who, they get to throw a pair of shoes up on the wire to remember them. And so that's just.
Well, the fact that the police get a lot of money I don't know how much money they get. I mean, the family gets the pension.
No, they get it if you die in the line in the line of duty.
The matter is the families don't want the money. They would rather much. And
of course. Yeah. Yes, of course. Yeah. No, there's no amount of money to replace anybody's life. I'm just saying the idea that you have to make the point that police lives matter is silly. Of course they matter. They're taking, if something happens to them, they're taking care, the family's taking care of. If something happens to a black person, you know, that's it. That's the point of the whole sane movement. All right. So you spent some time in the big house, Dad.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it, or?
It's hard for me to talk about. I was there for
hours.
Hard.
You were there for hours.
I was there for 9, maybe 8 hours.
Didn't you get thrown in the back of a cop car? And
you know what?
Yeah.
I got in the. Yeah, they arrested me.
This is part of the story.
You got arrested, thrown in the back of a cop car, and if I recall, you were a young man, maybe in your early 20s.
I had. It was August 12th, 1962.
Okay. And
I remember the date is in infamy in my mind.
Are you being serious?
No, that's when it was.
And I don't think
August 12th.
Yeah.
1962.
So, how old were you?
18. I had just turned 18.
Why were you in the back of a police car?
A friend of mine was drunk, and at the time, public intoxication was against the law. And he was, I don't know, mouthing off at some guy or something, and the cops were there in the corner. It was this, it was a dance downtown, and we were outside. There was a band there and all, and we happened to be on the street. And so the cop, so they looked at this guy. He happened to be the DJ or something, and they said, "What do you want to do with this guy?" And he says, "Well, arrest him." And they're telling my buddy, "Shut up. You're going to get in trouble." So I said, "What about him?" And they looked at me, and I go, "What, me? I didn't do anything." And they said, "Him too." So they arrested me, and I got in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
And my buddy was there, and I said, "Gary, get out of the way." He said, What are you doing? I said, "I'm not staying there. They're taking us to jail." So I took off.
You got out of, at that time, the back, the door didn't automatically lock?
No, I got in the passenger side, and then I got out the driver's side.
Oh.
They didn't see me.
And then you escaped from the cop car.
Yeah.
And then if my memory serves the story, this is it was tragic at the time, but looking back, it's absolutely hilarious. When you escaped, there's a whole bunch of people that saw you
cheering me on.
People cheered that you were.
They saw me escape,
and they cheered.
They cheered for me. They were, "Yay! This is escaping." There was a big crowd on the street.
Right.
It was like a couple hundred people.
Yeah, everybody's watching it. You get thrown in the car, and they say you get. So then what happened? Because this.
Well, I ran away, and I ran down a blind alley, and I literally ran into a cop who happened to be there. Bumped into him, and he said, "Where are you going?" I said, "There's a bunch of guys chasing me, and I have to get away from them." He says, "Well, let's go back and see them." I should have said, "I'm trying to get a bus or something," but I didn't. So they took me back, and then I got booed. And they put me in the car, and they put me in the middle seat, and they put my friend Gary in the driver's side of the back seat. And they said, "You better put a cop in there in case he tries this again," which I would have. And so we're going to the to jail, and the cop's in the back seat, and Gary kept mouthing off, telling the cop just the most vile things you could ever tell a cop. Like, he's talking about the cop's mother and stuff like that. It was really bad. And every time Gary said something, the cop hit him on the head with his billy club. And every time he hit Gary on the head with his billy club, the handle hit me in the head because he was reaching over my head to hit Gary.
Yeah.
And finally, after 3 times, I said, "Gary, will you shut up? Because every time he hits you, he's hitting me, and I'm not saying anything." So then they took us to jail, and I had to call my dad at 3 a.m. They wouldn't let me make a phone call till they kept switching the cops or whatever. And I said, "Hey, can I make a phone call?" And I couldn't sleep. I mean, it's not a really nice place at all.
No, I've heard
it was like a dungeon.
Yeah.
Back then, and it literally was a dungeon where they had us, and it wasn't.
What'd your dad say?
My dad came and got me because he worked downtown at the time for the print for the Herald Journal, and he knew what was going on in that jail, and he panicked, and he had to come down. He got the deed for the house or something like that because they didn't have any cash, and they put me out on bail. He had to bail me out. at like 4 a.m, and and then we went to court the next morning, and I didn't recognize Gary from the night before. He had the same sweater on because they beat him so bad that I didn't recognize his face.
Wow.
And, they made us sign off that nothing happened, and they let us go.
So the cops beat the hell out of you and made you say that nothing happened.
They didn't beat me at all. They just left me alone, but they beat the hell out of him. I mean, he got in a fight with 3 of them.
Where's Gary now?
I don't know. I don't know. I've lost track of him.
Well, you're going to be pretty surprised because joining us now.
It's Gary.
Come on in, Gary.
Gary, he went to jail a few more times after that too. I think. Yeah.
What about that? There's another sad story. I get, but you were at basic training. You came home and your dad told you that the cops killed your friend.
Yeah.
What's that? Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah. There was a good friend of mine, and he couldn't drink. He would get drunk on like 2 glasses of beer, and he was at a bar, and apparently they got into a fight or something, and they went outside, and there were 4 off-duty cops there, and they say he pulled a knife on them, which Doug, this is totally out of character for him. The fighting I don't understand because I never saw him like that, and as far as having a knife goes, I mean, I don't know what the deal was, but there were 4 off-duty cops, and 2 of them shot him. And he was in jail lingering, not in jail, I'm sorry. He was in the hospital lingering for several weeks. And I happened to come home that weekend that he had just died. And I found out about that. And it's what the interesting thing is, all 4 of those cops either left or were thrown off the force for felonies.
Oh, wow.
Separate, real felonies.
I feel like there was a detail about that story where your dad didn't want to tell you that your friend had been killed because he didn't want you to.
No, they knew I'd come home from basic training. They didn't want me to go AWOL.
Right.
I happened to come home on a weekend that I had off. So I don't know how I got home. It was pretty.
And you had volunteered to join the Army Reserve as a way to not have to go to war. Is that right?
No, I joined the Army Reserves because I was assuming that our unit would get to go to war, and that's what I wanted to do more than anything.
I don't think that's true.
It's not.
Your dad. He always tells stories.
I joined the Army, and 4 or 5 days later, I got a letter in the mail saying I was drafted. And your grandfather, my dad, handed me this envelope, and he knew what it was. He said, "Chuck, you got this. You got this mail today." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I opened it up. He says, what is it? What is it? I said, "I got drafted." He goes, "What does that mean?" I said, "Doesn't mean anything." I said, I just enlisted. They can't draft me, Dad. I'm already in the Army.
Oh.
And the song "Growing Up" by Bruce Springsteen?
No, I don't think I do. But
it's interesting because he tells the story about his dad when you hear it on the radio. He'll tell the story about how his dad was mad at him because he had long hair and played a guitar. And he said, "Wait till you get up. The Army's going to straighten you out." And Bruce tells the whole story about going down, and he was 4F for some reason. I don't know, but he says, and he came home, and his dad says, "So you went to the enlistment today?" He says, "Yeah." He said, "When you're 18, you had to go down." And he says, "And you took the physical?" He says, "Yeah." And he said, "How'd you do?" And he says, "I failed." And his dad said, "Good." And it was a very parallel story to my story, that my dad was very much, because it was a bad time.
That's the song you're talking about, "Growing Up."
Yeah. Well, he tells the story before he sings that song.
Okay.
It's always been a very poignant thing for me because it really is, parallel.
Yeah, well, so that's how, and then you got kicked out of the reserves for just being
I didn't get kicked out. I mean, I got sent home a few times and things like that. I got busted, and
why not? You know,
You
I
got
was
sent home when we were going out together, or when we first married.
yeah, we were. Yeah, no, I was done before we got married. But
enough of your delinquency stories. I want to ask Mom about
my delinquency stories.
No, you don't have any.
All right, well, yeah,
I can tell you some things that I can't tell you.
My siblings and I climbed trees across the street from our house, across the dirt road from our house. And when farmers would go by on their tractors, we used to shoot crab apples at them.
It's crazy.
I tell you.
I think maybe that's where you got the gene from to connect the mailboxes.
Well, we did that too. We threw stuff at cars at your house, literally from your house.
Yeah.
But anyway, Mom, you were a teacher in the Syracuse City School District from, I don't know, approximately what year to what year, and what did you teach, and how long were you a teacher?
I went to the district in 1984 as a teaching assistant in a special needs classroom. And I retired in 2001. I had 18 years in. Your father asked me if I could go longer, and I said, no, not if you want those fifth graders to live, because by that time, things were getting kind of tough. And from fourth grade, I taught fourth grade for most of those years, and 9 years with other adults in the room doing inclusion, as you know.
Yeah.
And that was the most miraculous thing I've ever seen. We saw miracles happen in that classroom. But at any rate, my last 2 years, I went alone. And after being with other adults in the classroom for 9 years, that was a real big change.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a good one. And fourth graders turned into fifth graders with a real attitude. And I didn't have any help at all. The principal took the teaching assistant between the two fifth grade classrooms and put her in a kindergarten with 11 children with a very experienced teacher. I don't know why. Anyway, I did my 18 years. I loved it in the beginning. I loved my kids, but there came a time when I knew that I needed to get out of there. And I'm glad I did, because I understand things are really bad in many schools now. And in fact, I was going through the grocery store line, and a young lady who's a senior at Salve said, it's horrible there. Kids are doing horrible things there. And that's not in the city. That's just in the school district.
So what I wanted to ask you about was, I have a really strong recollection of you taking some continuing education or some sort, where there was a speaker who came in, was a PhD type or something, happened to be a black man who maybe he wrote a book or something. But I just remember him, somehow he communicated to you and all the rest of the teachers, I guess, who are mostly probably white, that when you're a black man, it's the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning, that I'm a black person and I have to. But the effort there was to help white teachers have a certain cultural understanding about the issues that the black students in the black community deals with. And so my question to you is, what was that about? And did you think that was a kind of a helpful education? Was it controversial? Was it, were there issues around it at all, or did you appreciate that? And what did you learn?
His name was Dr. Hardy. He was from Syracuse University.
Oh.
He was brought into the district to go around to schools and educate teachers on diversity, on what it's like for black kids and so on. Right. And I thought it was very helpful. I mean, he gave us a lot of insight, but there were a couple of people who did not really appreciate that. They didn't think they had any problems. They were not racist or anything. And they just thought that was unnecessary. He shouldn't have had to come in and talk to us. But he was very, very, very effective, very intelligent, very, he told us how he would come in beautiful suits and nice shoes, looking slick. And then he told us how he could go downtown on Salina Street and talk Ebonics, because that's what you do.
Right.
I mean, when
Code
you're
switch.
with people who do that, you talk that way. When you're in a different climate or a different group, you talk differently.
And but just, I mean, it doesn't seem that controversial to, want to learn about cultural differences if you're an adult in the classroom, whether that be, Spanish speaking or black culture or socioeconomics of any sort. But now we've got a situation in the country, as you know, where we're fighting to include diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is not just black, white. It's learning disabilities. It's sexual orientation. It's any number of things to try to help folks understand the differences between each other. But as you know, it's become very controversial. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about it.
Well, it's very upsetting to me. I don't understand why it has to be that way. I do, but I don't, I just know that systemic racism is just continues on and on. It's never really gone away. And I know that I can't really understand what it's like to be black. I had one student, well, as you know, he actually ended up killing somebody else, shot him in the head, and I almost got jury duty for that. But once they found out he was my student, I got out of that. But he was the angriest child I've ever seen. And one day he was in the classroom with a chair over his head, and like his hands were shaking, and he had this look on his face. And I thought, if he lets that chair go, somebody's going to get hurt. And I was behind the desk. I wouldn't have been able to get to him on time, but I talked him down. And then I had a talk with him, and he said, "You don't understand, Mrs. Dominic. You don't live where I live." And that took me aback, I guess I could say, because I didn't know if he meant I don't live in the place where he lives, or I don't live in dark skin. But I did know a teaching assistant who was black that I sent him to. I said, "Why don't you go talk with Mr. whatever his name was?" And he did. And that man had a very nice chat with him. But later on, this very angry child, who had lots of reasons to be angry because of his home life, but he ended up, as I said, he killed somebody.
But the craziest and most dramatic part of that story is that you were on jury duty, and you didn't, they brought in this defendant, and basically they told all the jurors in the room who he was, and if anybody knows him or has a conflict of interest, anybody who's been on jury knows this happens, and basically you had to stand up and walk up and say, "I've got to."
No, that's not exactly how it happens. But...
Well, I'll tell you how it happened. Now, let me finish. So
it was very traumatic for me.
What happened?
Well, because after we had an initiation, all of the prospective jurors came into the courtroom, and then the judge came in, and then he said who the defendant was. Now, the defendant was sitting in there with two lawyers beside him. How he had two, I don't know. I couldn't see him. I couldn't see his face. I could only see the back. So when the judge said his name, I just about dropped dead. My heart went in my throat, and I thought, I just want to get out of here. Then we got through 13 people who were selected. Some were dismissed. And didn't they call my number? So I walked up to the judge. And when I did, mind you, the young man had heard my name, so he knew who I was. He turned around and stared at me. And I looked into his eyes, but I just walked on by. And I got up there and told the judge, "I have to get out of here. This is horrible. He was one of my students. I had his brother also. And I can't do this." And they all agreed that I didn't have to. And then I walked back. And again, he was looking right at me. And I felt like he wanted to acknowledge me. He wanted me to say something or do something. But of course, I could do nothing. I just walked by straight-faced and didn't give any inkling to anybody that I knew him or how I felt about him.
If you could have taught them, do you think, what would you have said?
I would have said, "I'm very disappointed that this is the way things are now for you. I'm very disappointed in what you did." And I probably wouldn't have said much because
you say
you don't really can't, know?
Yeah. Deb, what would you have said? Don't answer that. So, okay, let's move on to have let's vent a little bit. The real reason I really want to talk to you guys was
how come your conversation with your mother is so much more intelligent than your conversation with me?
I think you can answer that. So we should move on.
So what did you really want to talk to us about?
I just wanted to get your perspective on, all things COVID. I think it's always interesting, to hear from you. And you guys have both been very outspoken wherever you are in space about people maybe not wearing a mask and certainly people not getting vaccinated. And there's a person, one of the people who qualifies as your help. You have a team of people. And one of them is your massage therapist.
Yeah.
And we're not going to name this person, but
both of ours.
Right. Like I said, a member of the people that you have on your, servants, whoever these people are that take care of you, in this case, the masseuse. She massages you both?
No, I go to a different one.
Oh, I thought you had the same one.
Nope. And his hasn't gotten shots and mine hasn't. And they both have young children.
Oh, I'm confused. So you both have massage therapists and neither of them have gotten vaccinated.
Right.
Oh, that was confusing. And so, okay, fine. Dad, tell me about what's the deal with yours. Did you confront the person and say, I can't come anymore because you're not getting the shot?
Yeah, basically the last time I was there, I got a massage and I says, look, you're still not vaccinated. And I says, and I don't understand that. And she said, well, I'm not for a lot of reasons because she didn't, something about the technology and all this stuff, the stuff you usually hear. And she says, and I'm thinking about getting pregnant and so I don't want to get vaccinated. And I said, all right. So to make a long story short, she has COVID right now. Her husband had it. I guess he got through it. And their son, who's 3 years old, has it. And she is now 4 months pregnant and she's very ill with COVID. Nice. Which I think the long-term effects, if there are any, of COVID are a lot worse than the shot.
Yeah.
And to really bring the whole story home, we also coincidentally know her aunt. And her aunt...
Her great aunt, yeah.
Her aunt is our age. She has all kinds of heart problems.
Mm-hmm.
She got COVID. The aunt's daughter got COVID, and the daughter has MS. And their 8 or 9, whatever it is, 10-year-old son got COVID. It's important for his age because they all had the shots. They're all fine.
Right.
Now, if you have MS and or you have these horrible heart conditions that our friend has, you don't stand a chance. You're going to the hospital at least. And They didn't. They were fine. She says, I had the sniffles and stuff like that. And they're fine. And their cousin/niece is real sick and she's pregnant. So, I mean, the whole thing is upside down. It's just it's crazy.
Mom, what about your massage therapist? What's the conversation with is it her?
Yeah. She has now a 6-year-old daughter. She has a little bit of medical knowledge. In fact, she started to go to nursing school, but she didn't complete that. She wants to be a nutritionist, blah, blah, blah. She knows quite a bit about health. But she doesn't want to get vaccinated because she's waiting. She's waiting to see whatever. I texted with her the other day because she had put out something to all of her customers. And I said, oh, did you get vaccinated?
Mm-hmm.
Nope, she hasn't gotten vaccinated yet. Mm-hmm. Her partner had COVID twice. And he is a policeman in a small, suburb. And he won't get vaccinated and she won't get vaccinated. She said at one time, if I do, I'll do the Johnson & Johnson. She said there's stuff in the vaccines that she's not real happy about it. Doesn't think it's good. And so she's not getting vaccinated and I don't go to her. I won't go because she doesn't wear a mask and she wears a mask sometimes, but not all the time. And the principle of the thing, you don't want to get vaccinated? I don't want to come in here. It's a small room. Yeah. There's no ventilation.
Right. So overall, how has it been in central New York and with people your age? And how much, how concerned are you now with your dad? You've gotten your 6th or 7th booster, I believe that you've.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah. They call me Booster Boy.
I heard you give yourself a booster in the morning. When you wake up, you have a syringe and just pop it in there. How are you guys doing at this point in the pandemic? And are you less afraid to kind of live your lives and go about your lives, given that you are boosted, or are you still?
I'm doing pretty much whatever I want to
do. You wear a mask?
Yeah, I wear a mask, and I go skiing, I go to restaurants, and I go to, I eat out. I go to like Burger King,
what
fancy places.
We went to Chipotle the other day, but it's not real crowded there, and we were careful. We had our masks on until we sat down to eat, and there weren't too many people around.
And Central New York is rampant. It's better now than it was, but it was pretty rampant.
Do you guys generally eat at a lot of sophisticated establishments like Burger King and
Chipotle's and places where you don't need a reservation and you would never think of calling ahead?
Well,
we like to go there.
We went a while ago, probably about a month ago, to Vito's restaurant, Italian restaurant.
Okay.
Where, of course, you get full service. And we went with our neighbor friends.
That was crazy, wasn't it, Mary? It was
packed.
We had a waitress and everything.
It was a Friday night.
Wild.
It was packed. People were all around the bar. None of them had masks on. And they were all like real close and talking to each other. And people were hugging each other. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest, because I didn't think the tables were spread too far apart. And I just thought that was probably asking for trouble. But we had a nice time with them, and we didn't get sick, so we lucked out.
Is it true that both of you chose, at the beginning of this whole horrible situation, that both of you chose not to get COVID? And is it true that neither of you has gotten COVID?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, we opted out of the side effects.
But you also opted out of contracting the virus, apparently.
Yep, exactly.
And
do you think
even Fauci is saying now that, look, everybody's going to get this? I mean, I think he's thrown the towel in. I heard him today. He says everybody's going to get this.
Yeah. And do you think that you'll get it, or do you think because you chose not?
No. We don't want it. We don't want it, right?
No, we don't want it.
No, I don't see us getting it. It doesn't make it doesn't make any sense that that we would. I think what's going on here is that a lot of people are saying, I'll get the shot when 1 million people have died. And, I get that but I tell them, what if you're included in that number of 1 million? And, it will be too late.
Yeah, that's a weird stance for people to have. Wait till 1 million people die and then I'll get it.
Yeah.
But what do you think? You're different people. And what I mean by that is Mom's a better person. And what I'm saying is, how do you feel?
No argument here.
What is arguing?
Well, anybody that's met you. So what I'm saying is, how do you feel if a guy, goes on the radio nonstop and rants against vaccines and says, COVID's a conspiracy and blah, it's like the flu, whatever they're saying, right? And then they get COVID and die.
I feel good. Yeah, it's okay.
I say, hey, karma.
Oh, so you're both not great people.
No. I'm not feeling sorry.
I got that
people.
attitude from your mother, actually. I was feeling sorry for him, and then she said, Chuck, I just don't give a shit. And I said, wow. So I kind of went along with her. And then when I was feeling bad for those people till your mom said, no,
I mean, some people, I don't feel badly for those people who preach, like ministers and activists and so on, who get up in front of a microphone and preach to the audience, don't get the vaccine, it's not good for you, you don't need it, it's a government plot, it's the feds are doing it or whatever, and then they die. I don't feel bad because they have now indoctrinated all of the people listening to them.
Yeah.
And it makes no sense.
Right. You know who feels that way? Seriously feels that way?
Feels what way?
That there's no empathy anymore. There's no sympathy. There's no empathy. And it's the doctors and the nurses.
Yeah, a lot of doctors you talk to are really at first
they've been suffering through this and they're saying, we're done with it.
Yeah,
we're done with feeling sorry for these people. They come in, they says, we should just, and the part that bothers me more than anything is the selfishness of this. It's like, I don't want to get the shot because for whatever reason you've got that they come up with. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know what? What if you get a heart attack? What if you have an accident? What if you go into the emergency room you can't, and they say we're sorry, but there's no bed for you.
That's
because
happened.
all these idiots that didn't want to get a shot are taking up all of our beds.
Right.
And that's the selfishness of these ignoramuses, which is just off the charts, is what it was. And that's that's why I don't talk to people anymore about this, because I would be totally unreserved and say you're just selfish and you're an ignoramus. And I would call him an ignoramus. That's the word I would use.
A man just recently died, very ill. I don't know if it was a heart attack. I don't remember. But they tried to transfer him to another hospital, and they checked with like several, maybe 7, maybe 10 other hospitals, and none of them had any beds for him, and he died.
Imagine that if that was your child.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want you to imagine that, because then it would be me, and I have a feeling you wouldn't be that concerned.
Now that you mention it, it would be you. Yeah. They don't have room for a child.
How many hospitals would you bring me to before you just say, you know what, there's nothing I can do? How many?
Every single one.
Oh, you mean if you had to be in some kind of an emergency and you needed a hospital bed?
Yeah, and they kept turning you away, how many would you go to?
Geez, that's a good question. How many do you think?
Every single one, until we found one.
Really?
That would take him.
That's funny, because I was going to say 2.
You know he's the one.
Dad's
you know
like,
he would take you.
Dad's like, I'd take you to the ER, I'd take you to urgent care, I'd call my friend Dan, and if after all those 3 were exhausted, what are you going to do?
Yeah. No, I would go through that. Yeah.
You Google it.
Do you worry about the girls?
In what way?
Getting COVID?
No, I mean, as you know, Ava's already had it, and no, I'm not.
Are they going to get the boosters?
Neither of them has gotten it, and they probably should. I'm certainly not against it. It's literally, I mean, there's no downside as far as I can see.
After the conversation we've had, you're saying they should get it? Yeah, of course.
We just haven't gotten it yet. And
then have you gotten it?
Yeah, of course. I got mine right away.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, so
there's been a lot of controversy because one person is saying this and another doctor is saying that, and the CDC says this and the WHO and whatever.
Yeah, there's some confusion. I'm not worried about anything. I
just read yesterday, or maybe today, whatever. I just read that somebody said, one of the medical people, and it was a good source, said that if you got all 3 shots, you are in pretty good shape.
Yeah,
and
that's my feeling.
Worry. And I go to the grocery store, I wear my mask, and I haven't seen anybody in the grocery store, workers or customers, for a while now, that isn't wearing a mask.
Yeah, you have to wear it.
And I was in the drugstore where on the door it says masks required or something, but nobody enforces it. And this man was talking to the clerk, and he had his mask under his chin, and I was waiting in line, behind him, quite a bit behind him. And then I realized as he's walking out, he doesn't have his mask up. So I said to her, "Oh, I just wonder what good that mask is doing him when it's down under his chin." And she just shrugged her shoulders like,
it seems like you became a little bit of a Karen there. A little bit. Blowing the whistle a little bit.
I'd rather be known as a Natalie.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, well, listen, it's been almost an hour, and I've really enjoyed this.
Are you going to edit this down?
No, I don't have that kind of time. But this is what I tell the people who say edit it down. You can press stop anytime you want. So here's the final thing: is if you have any questions at all for me about anything.
About what?
I guess we're good then.
About anything? No, we have.
Do you feel bad for Aaron Rodgers, the football quarterback?
Holy!
He lost, Yeah. Yeah.
Nope. But we are very heartbroken that Buffalo lost in the last 13 seconds.
Do you feel sorry for him? I don't feel sorry for Josh Allen.
He's the Bills quarterback.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't feel sorry for those guys. They played the game and they lost.
No, but I just say, because Aaron Rodgers got so much hatred all season for his ignorant comments on vaccines.
Well, he got hatred. He also got love.
That's true.
Don't forget that part.
That's true.
He got a lot of love.
That's true.
Yeah, there's millions of people who think that that's the greatest thing in the world, that he didn't get vaccinated, and then he got sick and he couldn't play, and his team lost the game.
Right.
But they still love him, because he stood up for what, quote unquote, what he believes.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just go on and on with all this stuff about these idiots, but
Like the tennis player whose name I can't say.
Djokovic there. He's over in Australia and they deported him.
Yep. Yeah, they don't mess around over there, apparently.
No, I mean, it's like, you want to lie, go right ahead. And
what do you think of the governor of Florida saying, when asked straight up if he'd gotten the booster, he basically said, he's not going to talk about it. It's nobody's business. When asked, did you get
what I think of the governor of Florida. He is an asshole.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He is a horrible person.
Yeah.
All he wants to do is become the president. He doesn't care about anybody but himself.
Right.
He fits right in there with the other ones.
Right. All right. Well, I guess that's it. I thank you very much for creating this very valuable content. People have been asking about you. Well, there you go. Chuck and Mary, everybody.
Chuck and Mary, you're still here, and we're still hanging in there trying to stay safe.
50 years.
50 years. And these are the best years ever.
Why is that?
We're just closer than ever.
Yeah.
It's probably because we're getting old and we don't have that much time left.
We don't go anyplace.
That's true. We spend all our time together.
Huh.
Well, he goes to the gym and he goes to restaurants, and I go to the grocery store.
Mom, does Dad know about Robert? Oops. I'll probably just maybe I'll just press stop. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Robert. What's this Robert thing?
Well, there you go, folks. Who listened to that full hour with my parents? I hope the reason why I do such things is because I know that a lot of folks their parents aren't around anymore, and it really means a lot to them just to kind of eavesdrop on a conversation with someone, my age, 46, and my parents. And so I'm always happy to do that, and hopefully that gave you an interesting perspective on several things. But I'm real proud of my mom and dad. I love them very much, and I'm real fortunate to be their son, and so lucky to have them both around and so healthy, relatively, given what they've both been through, what we've all been through, really, at this point. So thanks, Mom and Dad. Love you very much. Thank you very much to Bill Browder. And thank you to you for listening to the show, for supporting the show with a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, with supporting the sponsors, with obviously a paid subscription. So sign up now if you haven't already. You can also edit your pledge up. You can pay more if you want. You can afford it. It's as little as $5. You get to be a member of the community, be on the Discord platform, and of course join us at the Thursday night hangouts. And we have a great community, including John Carroll, who's singing right now. Take it away, brother. I'll talk to you tomorrow, folks.
Get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.